patches for 8 months or something, and my core might be stronger, but it still looks the same to me, so I'm like, alright, let's try to do a little more cardio and, like, burn away some of the...
Nah, man, a lot of that's diet.
I know some of it's diet. I've had to change my diet a bit too, but I've been doing cardio by just looking at fucking DDR videos on YouTube and following along.
What?
I don't have a stationary bike or anything. I don't have a thing to play DDR with, so...
So, wait, Neil, wait. So you watch a DDR video, and then you pretend you have a dance pad?
Yeah, more or less.
Wow.
I'll do that for like 40 minutes to an hour, like 4 times a week.
We need to get Neil a dance pad, listeners. This is one of the saddest things I've ever heard.
Am I gonna plug it in? I don't have space for it.
This is like the 12-year-old at the arcade who can't actually afford to put quarters into the machine, so he just pretends to play it. You don't even have the machine, so it's even worse.
You know.
Meanwhile, I'm over here on my stationary bike with my fucking VR glasses, pretending I'm in Japan, riding my bike around.
I actually did go out to an arcade here in Portland specifically to see if they had a DDR machine, and they did, so I played some DDR in public on a DDR arcade machine recently.
And you were so prepared with all the practicing
Yeah, exactly.
that you did.
I was probably doing way better than I would have done 2 or 3 months ago.
Wow. Well, I'm glad that you're getting some exercise. That's really great. Really happy for you for that.
Really, I started doing it because I was like going out and doing like walks and stuff, but then it started raining all the time. So I was like, what can I do inside?
And that's what you came up with?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
But it's fun.
Well, it's kind of weird having the highlight of the podcast episode literally be the very first thing that comes out of your mouth, but...
That's not the highlight of the episode. What are you talking about?
Well, just watch the shorts on YouTube and you'll find out that yes, indeed it was.
Alright. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Audio Games Podcast. It is St. Patrick's Day weekend, and I am Neil.
And I'm Matt.
And we're back again. We're doing it. We're back in the swing of things.
If you're wondering why Neil's struggling to figure out what to say, it's because he messed up and he had to edit it. He said part-time gamers podcast.
I can't believe you do this to me.
Yeah, well, you're talking about editing it out. I'm just going to make it as hard as possible. If you really want to try and edit that out, you're going to have to edit me very heavily throughout this episode. But yeah, it's another weekend here. We have the St. Patrick's Day holiday coming up. Is there anything holiday-related that you're going to be up to, Neil?
Oh, God, no. I mean, I don't go out to bars and stuff anymore because I'm that, like, 2% of people still masking constantly everywhere and kind of avoiding public, crowded spaces in general, so...
That's fair. There's no better way to avoid public spaces than to pretend to do DDR in the privacy of your own home.
So true.
It's just like, that's like, DDR is already fake dancing. And then you're fake dancing. You're double fake dancing.
Well, what am I gonna do? Fucking put on
that's like
the latest Blackpink thing and try to learn their routine?
Yes. Absolutely.
No,
That's way more challenging for the brain, so you're practicing with your brain.
Right.
It's way more challenging for the body, because you use your whole body.
I will agree that sounds like fun, and maybe I would do that. But DDR is a very fast and easy thing to do, so I do.
It's just, all I'm saying is that, like, that's like someone who plays Guitar Hero pretending to play Guitar Hero, which is already fake guitar.
But I'm not doing it to be like, ooh, I got the high score, I'm getting better at the game. I'm literally just doing it to keep my heart rate up and get sweaty.
Okay. I'm sorry, it's hard for me to get over that.
look, let me put it this way. You bike to work, right?
Uh-huh.
So why do you have a fucking stationary bike?
Because I don't really have a lot of places I want to go, so I don't have a reason to actually go anywhere with my bike. And the other
Sure,
thing is, like,
but
it's an electric bike,
that's just
so
like
it's a
fake
lazy
biking.
fucking.
So
Yeah, I suppose.
it's
But
just to
like,
get the
I feel like
exercise.
I feel like this analogy falls apart because I own the stationary bike because I bought it, whereas you're doing your method because you don't have a dance pad,
I mean, I
which
don't have a
again is
dance
already
pad
fake
or
dancing.
a like thing to play. I mean, I guess I'm sure you can find a fucking
All
computer
right, you
version
know
of it.
what? We'll leave it up to the listeners. Which is weirder, me being on a stationary bike or Neil pretending to do DDR? Just leave a comment in the
I
video.
I feel like pretending is not fully accurate.
Okay.
I am still doing it. I just am not like
The fact
playing
that
the
you have
game.
to debate this at all is
Just like you are still
ridiculous.
biking, you're just not biking on a bike in the streets.
Yeah, well, when you're in the streets, you can get hit.
Well, in a DDR pad, you can have a dance battle. I don't fucking know. Look, we're not here to talk about DDR.
But that's the irony of it, Neil. That's an audio game. We're called the Audio Game Podcast.
That's true. That's true. We can put
I
Butterfly on and just go to town.
we're kind of obligated to talk a bit more about this, or at least
Okay.
to the length that we have.
The truth of the matter is, when I said I went to an arcade to do it, the main reason I actually did that is because I wanted to actually play the like 2 mat version, which for whatever reason, you can't really find videos of the 2 mat stuff on YouTube other than like videos from like third person behind someone doing it, rather than just like the arrows and shit. But you can actually find that for the single pad stuff.
Okay. Well,
Anyway.
you should just get in the groove, the PC
Mhm.
version, put it
Mhm.
on autoplay, and then you can find the doubles maps. Just put them in the game, put it on autoplay, and then you can pretend like you're doing it perfectly.
I could. But you know what I've been doing perfectly instead?
Playing Street Fighter? No, that's not it. That can't be
No,
it.
definitely not perfectly. I was going to say Balatro because
Oh, you've been playing Balatro.
you mentioned it last week and I was like, yo, I bought it and I didn't, not last week, but I bought it and I hadn't had a chance to play it yet. Like that night I finally did, and I've put more time into it than I care to admit.
Bro, I'm still putting time into that game.
I think I've won on like 4 decks now, I think. 4 or 5.
I've gotten all the way to the equivalent of like the challenge runs for the green deck, I believe.
Ooh.
It's
Okay.
kind of like the Ascension in a lot of those run-based roguelike games.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
so it gets pretty hard, man. You basically have to get a broken start to really, really last towards the end. But yeah, Balatro's great.
Yeah. Having put my hands on it and really been able to wrap my head around it, there's something very fun about the fact that like because it's playing with I mean, not always standard, but starting from a general base of probably a standard deck of cards, there's a certain level of familiarity that I just sort of already have internalized about, what is the frequency that I might pull a suit compared to a specific number if I'm looking at like, do I try to go for a straight or a flush here,
Oh yeah,
And
absolutely. The game teaches you to count cards.
yes. But I was just thinking like there's a certain amount of I've played cards in my life and like just have a little bit of that internalized in a way that makes jumping into it and thinking about how do I break this game a little bit smoother and faster to kind of get to the like, oh shit, I'm doing something crazy and cool. Where some of these other run-based games can be a little bit more of a steep on-ramp for you to figure out like, oh, this is how the game wants me to think about it so I can try to break it and make winning runs happen.
Sure.
And I think that's
that
fucking really good.
I think that ultimately, it's the same as Skyrim for me. That every time I open up that game, I'm like, I'm gonna try something different, and then I just do flushes. I just flushes all day. I'm like, oh man, I could just discard all these other things, and I could probably get a flush, and then that's usually the end of my run.
I very specifically went for a just pair run a while ago. Um, where I found the Joker that is like play 3 or less cards and will give you bonuses,
Oh yeah, the
along with a
torn in
bunch of
half
other
one.
things. Yeah, the torn in half one. So like I got that Joker and a bunch of other things to kind of support it in a way that meant like I'm just playing doubles like 2 cards and maybe throwing a third one in there just to like get rid of it like a discard and hitting I think the highest I got on a single pair was like 100K. And I was like, "Oh damn, this is working really well."
Yeah, there was a run that I did one time where I was just taking all the planets that I could, and I wasn't really paying attention. And like halfway through the run, I realized that my high card was at like level 7.
Oh
So
my
I was just
god.
like, oh, my high card does more multiplier and chips than like a full house. So I should probably just be doing single cards now. It's really weird how the game can turn on you.
Yeah.
Um, but the other thing that I want to say, and it's basically the last thing that I can really make any sort of conversation out of that game, is that that game has one song, and it has been stuck in my head for like the
Yeah.
past month.
Yeah, I
And
can see that.
not to segue too hard, but uh, I went on YouTube and I was like Balatro remix, Balatro cover, because I was just like trying to find something to like validate that yeah, this song is like an earworm and I can't get it out of my head. And it turns out that there's a pretty good amount of remixes and stuff for that song, which is telling. But the reason I say that it's a bit of a segue is because I've also been like trying to find covers for another game that you have finally started playing, and there's a mysterious absence of covers for Void Stranger.
Mm.
It's got a killer
Void,
soundtrack.
Void Stranger does have a pretty wild soundtrack. Every once in a while you hit a floor and you're like, "Oh damn, the beat is coming in and I'm still just picking up a block and putting it somewhere else."
No, although a tile, you can't move blocks.
A tile, yes, a tile, not a block. That game, I'm still, I have no real sense of how deep into it I am.
That's the fun of
Um,
it.
I kind of keep getting shocked. I thought there was going to be like 100 floors, and then I ended up on
Nah,
floor
man.
100 something, and I was like, wait, how deep does this go? Does it just go until I reset it? And then I accidentally reset it, and I found, I will say, I think I had a little bit of a leg up. You gave me that primer, and
Yeah, it did make a
the
big
primer,
difference.
yeah, but the primer didn't reveal anything to me outside of think about this game in the way that you might think about like Tunic and puzzles and stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah.
And that definitely had me looking at certain things in the world more carefully or noticing some things a little faster than I probably would have naturally.
Yeah, but also, as I was watching you, you were also coming up with all the most ridiculous red herrings of like, maybe if I do this, I'm like, bro, you're gonna waste a bunch of
Yeah.
time trying to do some of that stuff. But my best advice for you is don't worry so much about knowing everything. Get to the bottom for your first time, and then you'll start to realize like what you need to do.
Yeah, I do think I have shot myself in the foot a little bit by very explicitly finding a couple of the major secrets that give me like abilities that I don't naturally have.
Yeah, what are
Uh
those called? There's a word for those.
Burdens,
Yeah,
which I'm a little, you know, questionable about, but
Yeah,
finding
that's
those
weird.
has finding those seemingly early, probably because of the primer, also meant that I probably haven't hit stuff that I maybe should have by the time I found the first one or two of those. Um,
There's
so I'm playing it in a weird way. It's kind of what I'm saying.
I don't want to spoil nothing, but let's just say there's a reason that they have a name like that.
Mm-hmm. I figured.
Not to say you shouldn't seek out the other ones, but also like just like you said something very interesting to me while you were playing, and that was that you were encountering a bunch of rooms where like I don't know how you would do this without this item. Well, I think that your reliance on the item has maybe shot you in the foot more than anything.
Yeah. Yeah, I was playing very carefully before I got the wings, and then
And then
suddenly,
you stopped braining and you just started relying on the wings.
oh, they're just so good. They make
They
everything
are.
so fast.
It is literally the best item in the game, and you just happen to find that one first. So, congratulations.
Thank you.
Um, but you know, there's definitely value to playing that game without any of the extra stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like the first
Mm-hmm.
time, like I voided when I got to the bottom for the first time, but like I learned a lot of things, just
Yeah,
like techniques, but also things that I really shouldn't talk about. You'll figure it out as you go
that's
on.
okay. That's okay. The the thing that has been very silly about that game for me is because I'm streaming it,
Mm,
there's there's an amount of me rewatching certain bits. Um, which means sometimes I will come back into the game going, I want to look at X, Y, or Z, but I am not in a place to do that right now. And by the time I get back to that place, I will forget about it because then I'll be
okay.
playing the game again. So I'll spend the whole week thinking about it, and then I'm playing the game again. And I'm like, oh, I meant to try changing the color palette because I think something weird's going to happen with that given my character's name is Lady Grey and the other palettes are like have stars next to the names. So like it's not just changing it to red or ruby or something. It seems like it might change the story if I do that. And I'm like, I want to try that out, but I don't want to
I
do that
mean,
until it.
it's a really cool idea.
Yeah,
That's all I'm gonna
that
say
game
about
seems neat.
that.
The other thing I will say about the game though is while the overarching puzzle stuff I do find very engaging, I will say some of the very baseline gameplay of it I'm not the most excited about all the time.
Like what?
Just the way that you are given the rod and then you start the game and it's like, okay, these are going to be puzzles based around lifting up a tile, making a hole, moving a tile somewhere, making paths for myself as long as I have 3 tiles, that kind of stuff. While I do think that stuff is kind of engaging, I also think that there's honestly too much. If that was the game, I think I would be like, there's too much of this and I'm getting kind of bored with it. And so the fact that there's a whole meta around everything, like the other puzzle bits about the whole game, are what are really intriguing me. And that's part of why I think I've become reliant on those wings, is like, I don't actually find the normal part of the game particularly engaging.
Mm. Well,
Whereas I do
okay.
find the mystery wildly engaging.
I'll restate what I've said before. So this is not like too much information to be spoiling anything for you.
Mm-hmm.
And this is like before you even started playing on the podcast, I had said that the reward for doing well is knowledge.
Yes.
Okay. So when you start to understand things, it's again a lot like The Witness. Like you start to see the patterns, and it's not so much about like how do I do this, and more about how do I do like what's the sequence that I need to be
Mm-hmm.
playing this out in. Like I know what I need to do, right? That's like the step one. You get into a
Yeah.
room, you see where your goal is or what things you need to get, and then it's about developing the path that way. And maybe you don't find it as engaging as I do. Know that there's more to it than what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and also know that don't again like if you want to abuse the wings, if you want to abuse whatever else you find, feel free. Get to the bottom, and that's when the game opens up.
Yeah. I really need to get to that part, but it seems like a very cool game, and I do understand why you would say, Neil, check this out, and I do have a burning desire to continue. I want to see how deep the rabbit hole goes, if you know what I'm saying.
Wow. Yeah, I'm picking up what you're putting down. Um, so yeah, a game that I picked up on Steam was actually called Rabbit Hole. So good job.
Thank you, thank you.
Um, it was actually something that I found on Newgrounds.com, believe it or not.
Oh,
Uh,
geez, that place still exists and like does stuff?
right, you think that in the era of YouTube, it's like, wait, why would anyone be going to Newgrounds? But like, even with Flash gone, they like have itch.io games there, and
Oh, okay.
they like people still post animations. It's just you don't have to post it in a Flash format anymore. But yeah, I was on there and I was looking through the games, and the full game is available on Newgrounds, like just the whole game. But in the description, it was like you can get this on Steam for free, and I was like, oh, cool. I'm gonna just get it on Steam and put it on my Steam Deck, and so I did. And it's basically, have you ever played? What's a good analogy? Have you played the Madness game on Newgrounds? Remember the Madness series?
Not by name, but I played a
Okay.
lot of shit back in the day.
Okay, it's like the little dudes with like the crosses on their faces, like indicates like which way they're facing, and their hands are like all floating around because the person who made it didn't want to animate the arms.
Okay, I don't recall this one at all. That does not
Oh,
sound
okay.
familiar.
Well, then this is all going to be lost on you.
Perfect.
Well, okay, so it's a roguelite. You can think of it as like a platformer gungeon, which is funny because Enter the Gungeon made a platformer game, which is Exit the Gungeon. Still
Hmm.
haven't played that actually, but it's you have a dodge roll, you have a really floaty jump, and you start with a pistol and an AK-47. At least in the character that I've unlocked, and you just kind of drop into this unexplained world, and it's everything that you would expect from a roguelite. You have shops, you have little event mini games. Enemies are randomly placed and generated. There's bosses at the end of the floor, and it's free. And boy, there seems to be a lot of different content in this, very much like Gungeon. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if Gungeon was an inspiration for this game. But it's just really fun. It's a very quaint. I mean, apparently there's some sort of story because like the other half of the game is like this library. So there's library mode, and like all the books that you find go into the library, and it plays differently too when you're in there. It's like more of like top down. I don't know if there's like some sort of secret that you unlock there. I haven't really found much information about this game because it
Mm.
is a very, very small indie game that was apparently being worked on for several years. But it's free. That's the main thing. So if you're looking for a game to play and you're like, boy, I don't want to spend any money, and you're willing to put up with some very, very harsh difficulty curves,
Hmm.
then
Hmm.
I would say check out Rabbit Hole. Like, you don't even
Okay.
need to get it on Steam. You can go on Newgrounds and get the itch.io extension and just play it in your browser if you really want to. Don't recommend that, though, because I don't know how well that saves your progress.
Fair. Fair. Um, I'm I'm very curious about this game being that similar to Enter the Gungeon because that's one of those roguelikes where I had so much fun playing it and I never got near as far as I do in many others. And I'm not really
Yeah,
sure why I like burned out on it or just like,
it's just sensory overload. Like, if you've been enduring a run of Enter the Gungeon for like an hour, like your eyes are just shut.
hmm,
There's just so much going on the screen. Like, Nuclear Throne was very similar, I would say, to Gungeon. Um,
yeah.
and that game was also frantic as hell. And the idea of like concentrating and like maintaining a run for for upwards of like 30 minutes. It's just it melts your brain. It melts your senses, melts your brain, it melts everything. Because it's a nuclear throne. Rip Lambert.
Yeah.
I didn't like that game very much, actually.
I always meant to go back to it. I only played that one in the early access because it was one of those like first early access games before I kind of learned about myself and my inability to go back to games.
Yeah, you have a big problem with that.
I do. But you definitely don't have a problem with it, as you have returned once more to Dwarf Fortress.
You never leave Dwarf Fortress, Neil. That's the thing. Like, it always has space in your head. If you've gotten far enough into learning how Dwarf Fortress works, then you're always like, there's always an element of that lives with you. But yeah, we're kind of on the cusp of adventure mode coming out, and I kept seeing like updates in Steam, and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna sit down and play some Dwarf Fortress. And then before I knew it, it was into the wee hours of the night, and I had gotten my dwarf economy far long enough that I needed to assign bookkeepers and managers to manage all my tasks and figure out the value of the things that I had. I had a dwarf that went into a strange mood and took over a workshop and like halted the production of doors that I needed. And they were like, "I want you to bring me string and wood and a carcass." And I was like, okay, well, let me just butcher an ox really quick, I guess. Because what happens is dwarves make artifacts. Like, that's like the biggest and aspiration and most fulfilling thing that a dwarf can do is build an artifact. And so what happens is they get taken by a mood, and then they take over a workshop. It doesn't matter if they're like a armor smith. They might take over a stone crafting workshop, and they might just decide they want to make a stone craft randomly one day, and then they take it over and they will not leave until they either die or you give them what they want. They're extremely stubborn. I've had dwarves take over a workshop and I just didn't have what they wanted in my resources, so they just stayed there until they died. But this one wanted a carcass, they wanted string, and they wanted stone, and I got all that stuff for them, and they built this really cool scepter that had this historical event inscribed into it. I put it on a nice pedestal in the middle of the dining hall. Everybody loved it. And then it kind of tipped the scales for me because basically the way the Dwarf Fortress works is that if you have a fortress, the way that the game kind of gauges what to throw at you is mostly based off your economic standing.
Oh.
So now I had this really cool artifact jazzing up my fortress. The game was like, hey, you know what's going to happen now? We're going to send a very interested noble to your fortress to check it out. And I was like, okay, that doesn't sound so bad because normally I'm used to getting raided, having like horrors show up, like unnamed beasts, things pouring out from the underground. Noble don't seem so bad, all right? So the noble shows up, and he's like, cool, I'm going to move in here. I'm the mayor now. And I'm like, okay, I don't know what a mayor does, but apparently what a mayor does is they demand things for production.
They fuck up all your shit is what they do.
They just don't they don't cooperate. They don't care about what the fortress needs. They just want certain things produced. And then they demand really nice bedroom. They demand a tomb for like when they die. And the tomb needs specifications. They like make weird rules and just are assholes. They're just assholes. Like, we were perfectly fine before you came along. And so I built a drawbridge and I smashed him with it. I said, I assigned a zone underneath the drawbridge, and I was like, this is a cool gathering zone that's for you, specifically for you. And so when you're not doing anything, you can hang out here. And he's like, that's really weird. There's a drawbridge here. And I'm like, yep, this is your zone. And so he went to it, and then I pulled a lever, and then it got smashed.
Was there like fallout from that? I know when
well,
cat
not
stuff
immediately.
happens, everything explodes, but
Not immediately, Neil, but Dwarf Fortress is one of those games where, yes, everything is tracked pretty closely.
Mm-hmm.
And so the next time that I had people show up, word got around. I had some traders come through, and they're like, "Where's the mayor?" And they're like, "He's not here right now." And then eventually, I had an emissary come from the home capital or whatever, and they're like, "We're assigning you another noble."
No.
And also, my standing with them went down, and they didn't want to like pay as much for all the cool things that I was making.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then I was kind of under watch, so yeah, you can't just. I mean, you can. You just have to deal with the consequence. That's what Dwarf Fortress is really all about. Just doing things until there's consequences, and then figuring out how to navigate that.
Well, damn. What the hell is adventure mode gonna be in that game?
Oh, so adventure mode was in Dwarf Fortress Classic, which
Yeah.
was before the Steam release. And it was basically just an open world adventure simulator, like where you take the worlds that you generated and you built your fortresses in, and you can literally just like make a character and adventure around. Um, though
Wild.
it was lacking in Dwarf Fortress Classic because there wasn't a lot of like goals, but I guess you could say the same for just the normal fortress mode, really. But they're really ramping it up, letting you do things a lot differently, incorporating quests. This is also like gonna lay some foundation for the groundwork for the magic system,
Mm-hmm.
from what I understand. And then also they're gonna try and integrate it into fortress mode more closely, in the sense that like the things that you do historically in the world will, have some sort of ripple effect on everything that's in that world. So
Oh, okay.
yeah, maybe your dwarfs will build a engraving on a noble's wall that depicts an adventure coming and killing that noble. I don't know. Just an idea. I mean, I wouldn't
Uh-huh.
recommend that,
Uh-huh.
but I mean, it's certainly something that could happen.
Okay. Well, you brought up Street Fighter a little bit earlier, and I
I
have
sure
been playing a
did.
lot of it because Ed came out.
He did. That's your old standby in 5.
I have some feelings about it.
Neil, you have feelings all the time, but I'm interested in these ones.
Okay. Okay. So, I want to preface a lot of this with
Mm-hmm.
I think Ed in Street Fighter 6 is a very interesting character design space.
Okay.
The move set and everything is pretty interesting. You can do a lot of cool kind of free-form combos in a way you can't necessarily with a lot of other characters. There's a lot of cool stuff going on there. All of that
Sounds
said,
cool.
all of that said, this guy is not the same fucking character whatsoever.
I've seen the trailer though. He does a lot of the same things.
He has about 2 moves that function even somewhat similar to how they did in his last iteration. And I'm talking function, not like how you do them. The complete rework of all of his normals, except kind of heavy punch, and basically a complete rework of all of his specials as well, really just makes him not feel like the same character. Like, he even has moves from the last game. Like, he has Psycho Knuckle. The actual use case for Psycho Knuckle is not what it was in 5. You cannot use it the same way. And not just in like a, well, this game has Drive Impact, that's a hard counter to it. I mean, like, that's a anti-fireball move now, but only if you full charge it. And if you full charge it, there's almost no fireballs that can't travel the entire screen faster than the charge up for that. So you can't really effectively use it as an anti-fireball move. And like his duck dash thing, which looks very similar to his V skill 2 and 5 has no projectile invincibility. That's not an anti-fireball thing at all. It is strictly a combo slash, I guess, throw mix-up tool. And even his uppercut stuff is actually functioning like a uppercut, giving you like upper body invincibility and stuff that it didn't used to have. That was not his anti-air in the past. And now it's a like really slow DP. So like it's not easy to anti-air with compared to a lot of other DPs anyway, so it just feels like a weaker version.
So
like
what I'm taking away from this, Neal, is that you like Ed. You like this new version.
I think the new version is interesting and it is fairly fun to play, but it feels like if, and part of this is also controls at this point too, but it kind of feels like if they had said that Nash in Street Fighter V was Guile.
Okay.
Like, Nash is fucking not Guile. Anybody can say, sure, he has like a flippy kick type thing. He has sonic booms, more or less. He does not feel functionally in any way like Guile does. And that feels like what they did to Ed for me. Which is like really unfortunate because, you know, controls aside, I really liked a lot of how old Ed functioned, like button wise, what his buttons would do for you, and he just doesn't have them now. So
Do you feel betrayed? Do you feel betrayed?
Betrayed isn't the right word, but like I look at how Jury changed between 4 and 5. And it seems less extreme than how Ed has changed between 5 and 6.
Well, you know, it's a brave new world. The fact that there's an Ed in this game at all is honestly a little surprising to me. I don't feel like he was the most popular character.
Apparently he was more popular than I think we gave him credit for. I thought he wasn't particularly popular either, but I think the Street Fighter V version of modern controls they did for him actually did make him a surprisingly popular character for like their ratings and stuff that were like, they're saying how many people are playing these characters. A lot of people were playing Ed, and he got really strong towards the end of Street Fighter V. So apparently he was like maybe not top tier but close to it at the end of that game.
Yeah, he definitely had some very interesting combos with, I think V-Trigger 2.
That's the one I liked using.
Yeah.
The ball was 1, and he basically, that's one of the, like, 2 or 3 moves he still more or less has in his Super 2 here in Street Fighter 6.
Okay. Well, that's good because people really enjoyed the combo videos where they were bouncing off that black hole thing.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm
sorry
still,
about Ed.
I know. I'm still playing him, because again, like, there are cool things about what they did to this character. If anything, when you say, do you feel betrayed? If anything, here's the piece I think feels like a betrayal to me. Ed was explicitly built to be a, like, easy-to-use character for newer players in 5. And the ways in which they changed him, they have classified him as one of the hard characters to use in 6. And if you watch some, like, content creators on YouTube and stuff doing things with Ed, they will tell you, like, it is surprising that they have made some of his combos this complex and, like, hard to do. It is the thing that feels like betrayal is they made a character specifically for newer players to be happy and want to use, and bringing him into the new game in a way that is like, hey, fans of this character, he's not for you anymore.
Well,
That
I
feels a
mean,
little bit like a betrayal. And I know they have the modern mode thing, so every character's for you now, but no, no.
I feel like I asked you earlier if you felt like you were betrayed, and you
Well,
said
I
not
said
really. That's not
no,
really the right
but then I
word.
started thinking about it more, and it's like, yeah, a little bit.
All right. Well,
It wasn't the
you
word I
know,
had in my head prior to you saying it.
listen. There's got to be some people who started out playing Ed, and they ended up getting really good at Street Fighter, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so new Ed comes through, and he's a complex and advanced character to use, and they're like, baby basic Ed was there to prepare me for adult cool Chad Ed, the soy Street Fighter 5 Ed versus the Chad Street Fighter 6 Ed.
He's still way too much of just like an emo little bitch to be a Chad, even in 6.
That's fair. As a character,
Yeah.
I've never really liked Ed.
No, that's fair. I don't think as a character he's like particularly exciting either. It was the way his combos looked and functioned that I really gravitated towards. And like
So
I can still grab people out of the air with Ed. It's just much harder to do now and awkward to do now
is
and
there a character in Street Fighter that you really like but you would never play?
um but I would never play.
Yeah.
I mean Honda?
You like Honda?
Yeah, he's just a giant happy sumo dude, but he's a fucking charge character, so
Charged character, yeah, I
I just
know.
can't fucking do it. I actually did attempt to like see if I could play him with modern controls. Like just I'll do it on a controller that they're built for and everything. And they still make you like hold charge even with fucking modern inputs in a way that is like still
Because
somehow
charge
more
moves are
awkward.
easy.
Yeah, but
Because charge
fucking
moves are
modern
easy.
controls, the whole point of the modern controls is like you press forward and special and get your special. And it's like, nah, you have to still hold a charge to fucking do your back specials with this guy. And if you don't time it right, in
Okay,
modern
well,
mode,
listen.
his fucking leap into the air butt stomp shit, you just have to do. He doesn't have a modern input for that.
Right, right.
So you
But
still just
you have
have
to
to fucking
consider
do charge moves.
you have to consider the buffer time is a balance thing though. Like the ability to just spam a move that you would normally have to buffer, like that's a big balance issue. Right? And so when you talk
Hmm.
about the butt stomp one, that one is punishable. It's like super easily punishable, right? And you have to realize like modern controls are for people who are learning. So if everybody's playing modern controls with you and your friends, and here's the dude who has the charge move that's like just clearly superior to moves that you would not normally have to buffer, then yeah, that's a problem.
Sure, but in the same respect, like people are more consistent at doing a DP with modern than they are doing a DP in general. Like, and that turns it into a one button DP. But
Sure.
they balanced Ed in 5 because he didn't have to do an input for it by making it slow, and it's still slow as shit in 6 and like not up to
Yeah,
par of all the people who can do even
but what if you
modern control
EX it?
DPs in 6. Like it's not balanced the same way.
Okay. So I've played you and your Ed a lot in Street Fighter Five.
Mhm.
Okay, you're talking about Psycho Upper, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so
Well,
Psycho
yes.
Upper was not a great DP
No.
in 5. But as a reversal, the EX version came out so fucking fast.
Mhm.
Like it in terms of like frame data, it was almost instantaneous. And I'm
It
talking not like in terms of execution, I'm talking about in terms of getting a hitbox.
the thing about it was it's still slower than an EXDP from all the normal DP characters. It was just the invincibility was longer because it was a slower move. That's why it
Okay.
felt so ridiculous.
All right. So is the EX version for Ed better than the EX version for Ed and 5?
No, it's the same. You can still do a meaty jab and recover in time to block it, which you
Okay.
cannot do against like Ryu or Ken.
Okay.
And that's what I'm saying is like there's a certain amount of like they gave his DP, his Psycho Upper, anti-air
Anyway.
properties in 6, which he didn't have
Anyway,
before,
this
but
is
it's
getting
still
real
slow and
heady.
bad.
I get that you're upset. This is getting very specific.
I know.
Let's
I had to rant
let's
a little bit about Ed. It's
why don't
what
you
I had
rant
to
about
do.
Project L instead for a little bit?
Okay.
So
We forgot to mention this last time, everybody. Project L has a real name now. This is the
okay,
League of Legends fighter.
wait. Yeah, okay. Yeah, we need to give context. When you just say Project L, most people aren't going to
Yes.
know what you're talking about. Even people who play League of Legends, probably the majority still don't know what Project L is.
Fair. This is the League of Legends fighting game that we've been talking about for years now. They came out a couple weeks ago saying, hey, it's not just called Project L anymore, because that was our internal name. We have named the game. It's called 2XKO, as in the number 2 XKO. And it is not a good name.
Yeah, it sounds like it came out of whoever Elon Musk is having sex with lately, and that he got to name it.
I didn't think it was that bad, but fair. I think the way I
It's
hear
so
it,
generic.
yes, the thing that I hear about it is like it's like they saw people talking about Marvel versus Capcom 2 and stuff, which people just say MVC2, and they said, let's just name our game a thing like that because people are going to make an abbreviation for it anyway. But now it just sounds like a bad fucking name because it's not for anything. It's just
It doesn't evoke anything. It's not
yeah.
descriptive. I don't think people are gonna look at that name and think, "Oh, the League of Legends fighter."
Yeah. Yeah. They could have called it so many things, but
They could have just called it
2XKO.
Project L at that point. Project L
Yeah.
is still a better name.
Yeah. I personally agree. All that said, I'm probably just going to start calling it the way that I would talk about Hunter x Hunter and just say 2KO. Drop the X completely.
I'm I'm just probably gonna call it Project L.
At a certain point, you're not going to be able to. No one will know what you're talking about.
It's just 2XKL. Like, every fighting game I've ever played is 2XKO. You have to knock the opponent out twice to win the match.
Yeah, but in this one, you have to knock 2 opponents out to win the round.
Okay.
Yeah,
Like,
I don't.
like if you're naming Smash Bros by the same convention, what would that be?
Nintendo Ring Out.
Yeah, knockout Nintendo.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean,
Nintendo's knocked out. I'm segueing here.
Let's go. I know, I got you. Go for it.
Okay, so Nintendo has knocked out some less than legal operations with the emulator for the Nintendo Switch called Yuzu. So Yuzu it came out very quickly after the Switch was released and had been getting regular updates and was a very, very capable emulator, especially for what is essentially a modern console. Like, let's be clear here, the Nintendo Switch is not a powerful console, which is basically what gave emulation an edge on it. It's the fact that it's just, basically the same as a Wii U in power. So like a lot of the architecture was already understood, and Nintendo is not really that cryptic in the way that they make their firmware and hardware. So the way that they combat that is like using proprietary devices. So like the reason that Nintendo 64 was still using carts was because they were afraid of piracy, and PlayStation was using CDs that you could just pop right into your computer, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when Yuzu's been around for a while now, and it's not the only Nintendo Switch emulator. In fact, Ryujinx is a very close competitor. I remember when Tears of the Kingdom was leaked early, there was like an arms race between Ryujinx and Yuzu to see who could get it operating completely like the fastest. And so there were like literally hourly builds being put out. The reason that we're not seeing Ryujinx being pursued by Nintendo, even though really they probably should, um, is because Yuzu had the most recent builds behind a paywall of their Patreon. So they were directly profiting from something that encourages piracy. And I think that was the crux of the lawsuit and why it was um, so easily pursued. So
Mm.
essentially, the way that the Patreon worked was like you could do like beta builds, but the beta builds were essentially stable in the sense that like they had developed it so well and they have gotten so far along in how they were working that the only reason that you would need the beta build is because it would support the newest games.
Yeah.
So, when you talk about like game preservation and like having reasons for emulation, like you really can't do that. And when you're literally profiteering from it, then I think that yeah, there is certainly a case there. I mean, there's a case there without it on Nintendo's part. So you kind of like set yourself up for this. Apparently, they settled out of
Yeah,
court.
I remember looking into this a little bit too, and it sounded like I'm not someone who's done any of this stuff, but apparently behind the paywall wasn't just uh like the beta builds and stuff, but I guess Yuzu was providing not necessarily like game keys. I'm not 100% sure how the piracy sting works, but like there was something that they were providing that is like one step further than most emulators usually do, where that ends up being provided user side. And
Man,
that
if
is
I knew
another
anything
piece.
about that, I would be able to talk about it here. But I but I don't know anything about that. But if I did, I'd probably say something like the encryption on a Nintendo Switch has something to do with two separate files, including a title file that's used to like read the headers of games and a key file which is used to decrypt things.
Mm,
And you to do legal emulation, which is already kind of like a really gray area. You would have to get into your own Switch's firmware and extract that.
yeah.
However, there's nothing that would technically stop you from using someone else's encryption. I believe that's what you're talking about.
Yes, that sounds right. And supposedly some of those keys were being provided by Yuzu on that Patreon, not being provided by the users themselves. So that's another part where it seems like this is probably why it was an easier thing for them to do. I've also heard that Yuzu, in a sense, is being continued as a open source type of thing through Suyu, is what they have called it. Very creative.
Which is a very hilarious name considering what had happened.
Yeah. Suyu, I think is how they're spelling it. But from my understanding, that is kind of a continuation of Yuzu, just separated out from the company that had been creating it and updating it and turning it into more of an open source thing that, again, is not providing the key part. So
Yeah.
maybe a little
Um,
harder for Nintendo to go after directly.
well, I mean, while I was researching this myself, I actually found out something that was very interesting. So apparently when the Steam Deck first came out, Valve had used footage of Yuzu
Oh
as a
no!
way of like promoting the Steam Deck, and I don't know if they realized they were doing that, but it got taken down pretty fast.
Yeah,
That
I
like there was a
bet.
period in time where like Steam as a company was like, "Hey, check out the Switch game you could play on our Steam Deck." Uh,
Wild times.
but you know a game that you can play on literally anything, Neil?
Uh,
You
Pong?
looking at my list? Oh no, Doom is what I was going for, but I'm not going to talk about Doom. I'm actually going to talk about Infinite Craft, which can also play on pretty much any device. So I've
Oh, okay.
actually been playing this over the past like month and a half. It became an internet sensation with like people posting their creations, but it is an AI kind of supported version of those like element crafting games. I don't know if you've ever played those in your browser, but it's
Not in my
on.
browser, but I think I played, it was Chem something, Chem Lab or like Space Chem? I have it on
Sure,
Steam somewhere.
I imagine that might be what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
But the idea is that you start out with like four elements: fire, water, earth, and wind, and then you just combine things, and it creates new items, and you continue to just do this indefinitely. And in most games, like what was the one that I played? Oh my god, I can't even remember. But there was one that I played on Android where you just drag things together, and it's a humongous waste of time. And I spent many days pooping and playing that. Um, there's an ending. Once you've unlocked all of the items, once you've figured out all of the things, it's over. But on the website neal.fun, that's Neil
Excuse me?
Neal
Oh,
dot
okay.
fun.
Whew. Had me scared for a moment. I was
Um,
like, what? Did I fall asleep and produce a video game without knowing?
no, no, you didn't. I don't think that you would have done that awake. Um, but you can go and play it, and it's just never going to end because there's an AI that unfortunately Neil has to pay for. Not this Neil in the podcast, but the guy who made it. He had to like start a coffee because like so many people were playing it, and it was like taking up so much computational power that he was starting to get charged more for like running his game.
Oh my god.
Um, but yeah, it's like I've seen people make specific streamers. I've seen people make literally every video game. It's just it uses an AI API hook to like probably a search engine or something, and it produces results. And sometimes it can produce things that you've never seen before because you're just kind of throwing things together, and it makes some weird, stupid combination of words. But it's still fun.
Hmm.
It's it's just by the same guy who did the password game. You know the password game?
No?
Okay, so I mean, not to like spend too much time on neal.fun, but the password game was also like kind of a meme game where uh you would put in a password. It would ask you to provide a new password, and then it would give you a new
Oh,
rule for the password, and like, oh, you need to have this many
yes.
characters, and then it would be like, oh, you need to like have the capital of Guam in it or something. You
Yes.
need to have.
Yes.
It's like here's a chessboard with the pieces moved around. What's the most optimal move in fucking chess nomen? Chess. What's it called?
Nomenclature?
Uh, Not nomenclature. It's called something else.
Yeah, but
Uh,
I know, like
Notation.
D7,
Notation.
that kind of stuff, yeah.
Yeah, chess notation. Like do it and add that to your password. Add three chemicals and
Yeah.
their abbreviations, and so you'd have to keep doing that over and over
I
until like
do recall the password game now that you're mentioning
okay.
it. And then like at some point like a worm happens and starts trying to eat your password
Yes,
away and
there's an emote worm, and like you have to feed him apples, and if you don't, he'll starve, and if he starves, then you lose. So
yeah.
you have to, while you are trying to formulate the best sponsor to put in your password, whether that be Coke or Doritos, you also have to be feeding the worm emoji apples, or he will die. And so yeah,
Exactly.
same dude made the Infinite Craft game.
Okay. Okay. Wild. Um well, I don't really have a segue to this piece because it's just news and it sucks.
Yeah, we still do that, huh?
Look, I gotta. It's everywhere, and I want people to know we're not just ignoring it. Hey, everybody. If
Isn't
you've
it
seen
tempting to
anything,
ignore it though?
if you've seen anything out there right now about Sweet Baby, Sweet Baby is a company, I think based out of Montreal. Very small. It's like 16 people or something. And they are a consulting company. They've been brought in on a lot of big games, big and small, frankly, including like the recent Spider-Man, I believe. And this is a company that gets consulted to come in and be like, hey, can you read some of our stuff and make sure there's nothing that comes off as like derogatory or insensitive in some fairly specific ways, to just like, hey, basically proofread our games so that we're not doing some fucking stupid, obvious big fuck up of some kind, or even to punch it up a little bit and make these characters feel more fleshed out for us in ways that maybe we don't know how to do. That company, again, a consulting company, is being targeted by a lot of really shitty people out in the world in a pretty similar fashion to like a decade ago when Gamergate happened, as they called it. And it is all because people have decided to blame Sweet Baby for the wokeness happening in so many major video games these days. It is really disheartening. It is disgusting what this attack group is doing. And my heart goes out to everyone at Sweet Baby because, unfortunately, the way a lot of companies work, I'm not going to be surprised if we see major companies just not using Sweet Baby for this service anymore, but still using this service, and Sweet Baby's going to go under because a bunch of fucking stupid people think that somehow this 16-person company is forcing major companies to write black people into their games. It's fucking stupid. It's so stupid.
I'd be really interested in seeing like what work they did exactly. Like you said, they did Spider-Man.
So they literally are a consulting group. I think they came in. Spider-Man, I know, is a recent one that they were credited in. But really, they are a company that looks at your script and like is I'm trying to, my brain isn't working with the right words right now, but basically they are doing a like sensitivity, diversity type reading for it to try to make sure that there's nothing problematic, obviously problematic anyway, or to try to consult with you and say like, here's ways to make these characters maybe feel a little better in some certain scenes, like maybe helping rewrite certain scenes. They're not like writing stories for these games or anything.
So I think that the important takeaway here is that as a consulting group, they don't have creative control over anything that they're working on. Correct. They have been brought in at request of the company that is making the game.
Yes.
So I feel like anything that you should be tossing at them really should be getting tossed at the parent company because they're just a third party.
Yeah. And even then, the shit they're complaining about is like, oh no, there's lesbians in my video games now. Like, who cares, man? Who cares?
Nice. That's great. I love lesbians.
Me too. They're great. And there's great games with them in it. People love The Last of Us too, so I hear.
Name 3. Go.
3 games with lesbians in them?
Yeah, are you a real ally, Neil? Can you even name 3
All right, I'm going to say
lesbians?
Last of Us 3, obviously, or 2. Fuck, 3. Last of Us 2 is like...
There will never be a Last of Us 3. He's done making video games. He just wants to make film now.
Last of Us 2. I want to say the game is called Get in the Car Loser. Is that the name of that game?
Sure. I don't know.
You don't know? I'm pretty sure that's a like Zoe Quinn joint. There's a lot of games that like you can be a lesbian in them. I think that counts, so I'm gonna say Mass Effect 3.
Okay. Yeah, that counts. All right. You're an ally.
There's
That's what it
more.
takes.
There's a lot more.
That's what
I don't
that's what
think
it
that's what it
takes.
takes. I feel like it takes a
That's what
lot more than that.
Obviously, I'm being facetious.
Oh boy.
But yeah, I'm glad that you could name three.
It'd be kind of embarrassing if I couldn't. I play a lot of games, and a lot of them
Bro,
will let you be a lesbian in them.
you could literally just say three gotcha games and you'd be correct.
Oh yeah, I probably could have said Genshin Impact and
Absolutely. 100%. Um okay. So, speaking of games that probably could use consulting. Um I did play Unicorn Overlord.
Oh, did you? Okay, I wasn't bringing it up because
I
I was like, ooh, are there lesbians in that?
probably I haven't gotten that far.
Okay, okay. Seems
But
like a game that
boy,
might.
I read Metacritic for it, and I was like, okay, that what is this? What are people saying about this? And it's been doing really well, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm happy for that because I love Vanillaware. Okay, I love Dragon's Crown, I love Odin Sphere. I even played Grim Grimoire. I can't say that I love that one, but it certainly is a Vanillaware game. Um, so they have that wonderful like painterly 2D art style that you come to expect in all of their wonderful games. You got Muramasa, you got 13 Sentinels.
I was gonna
Um,
say that was 13 Sentinels was them, I thought, but yeah, it was.
yes, absolutely, it was. Um, and then in terms of the gameplay, you have like this mix of like Final Fantasy, uh, was it a yeah Final Fantasy 12 with the Gambit system, and also Ogre Battle, but like Super Nintendo Ogre Battle, not Ogre Battle 64. Where
Sure.
um okay, so you're probably not as versed in these sorts of games. So let me explain. So you have units, right? And when I say units, I don't mean like individual characters. There are individual characters, but each unit is made up of several individual characters. And in the unit, you have positioning, you have like orders that you give them, and they have stamina. And so when you get into an encounter, like you get close to an enemy on the map, your characters act independently of you. You have to set them up. You kind of like it's almost like an auto
Hmm.
battler. So think of
Okay.
like all these modern auto battling games. And so the characters can get different skills from equipment. They can get different skills from leveling up. You can move characters around in your units. And so there's a lot of customization and strategy from that aspect. And I see a lot of potential in it, even though I'm not nearly like probably even a couple of percentiles into the thickness of this game. But oh my god, the story is the most generic story I have ever heard. We
Uh-oh.
got we got Kingdom, right? Kingdom was from main character, it's Kingdom. His mama, the opening scene is like he's wandering in on his mom who's like talking urgently. Oh no, General has turned on them and he's bringing their army to like take over the castle. So they have to send the trusted knight away with the child so that he can like secretly be raised so that one day he can come back and like liberate things. It's literally that.
Yeah, that's pretty generic.
Yeah.
I mean, they might,
Um
it's Vanillaware. They might do something weird with it partway in.
I mean, what was the most creative Vanillaware story? I would say probably 13 Sentinels.
I was gonna
But
say
13
13
Sentinels,
Sentinels gets pretty fucking wild with time changing and
yeah.
aliens and mechs, and it's a weird game.
Well, anyway, the game is called Unicorn Overlord, and so the coat of arms for the kingdom that you came from is a unicorn, and also apparently there's like a guardian unicorn deity. Like that's as far as I got with the whole unicorn thing. But like that's not the greatest name for a game. I'm hoping that like there's some sort of like contextual explanation. But yeah, I mean, I'm probably gonna be playing a lot more of
All
this.
right, I'll make sure to follow up on that game next time.
Okay.
Ah, well, Matt, it's been a pleasure.
Always.
Audio Games is hosted and produced by Matthew Lane and Neil Jimenez. Our theme music is Recharging by Gooset. If you'd like to reach out to us, please email us at audiogamespodcast@gmail.com. Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Part-Time Gamers podcast.
It's not part-time gamers, it's audio games.
I'm cutting that out.
You fucking
no one's
did
ever
it.
gonna know.
You fucking did it. You fucking
I
did
did.
it.
I'm cutting it out. It's fine.
You're not cutting it
I
out.
am.
I'm going to continue
I
to
get to edit
reference
this
it.
shit, so I am. You know what else has been a pleasure?
Doing another episode of the podcast?
No, the, berry crumble pie thing I got for Pie Day in my fridge and ate way too much of earlier today.
Oh, you got a pie for Pie Day?
I did. And, I wanted to get, half a pie, but there were no half pies, so I got, a really fucking big one, and I've been maybe going a little hard on it.
Well, I mean, thankfully you did get your DDR in today, so...
Exactly. I gotta work off my Pie Day. My Pie Day pounds.
You're such an absurd person, Neil. Oh yeah, I bought a pie for Pie Day. I've been chowing out on that, but I've also been pretending to do DDR.
Oh my
to
God.
work off my Pie Day pie. Look.
I don't do other things. I gotta fill my time with something, and maybe
yeah, but it's
just
not,
reliving the old days of being a good, fun DDR
I don't have
guy.
an argument for that, but I do have an argument that maybe there was something else you could have thought of.
It works for me.
Okay. Well, maybe you should record yourself doing it.
God, no.
So that everybody can see how effective it is.
No, I do it naked. What are you talking about? I don't want to get my clothes sweaty.
I mean, full disclosure, when I do my stationary bike... When I do my stationary bike, I'm in my underwear, so...
Oh, I'm dying.
Just when I thought it couldn't get any more absurd.
I need to stop.
I think that's it. I think that's the end of the episode.